Rajani's got the good backlighting going on there. I like that.
I have like no idea what's going on. I'm so dark. I have no idea.
The camera's focusing on your window. So
I know, it's so weird. Maybe I'll move sides.
If you just need to twist your screen so that it's away from your cameras. There you go. Now
slide left.
Hey, Pedro.
Hey.
Hi, Pedro.
Hi, everyone.
Hey there.
Okay, we're just waiting for Yuri, and then we'll get going.
Sounds great.
Or maybe we're waiting for Lurie.
It's definitely Lurie. Definitely Lurie. When he delays us like this, then we're going to have to call him Lurie for the whole week as punishment.
I'm sure you'll love that.
There is a King Lurie emoticon in Slack, so feel free to use it at will.
Lurie here.
There he is. Hey, Lurie. Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome, Lurie.
I'm really excited to see you guys on next month. It's gonna be awesome.
I think we all are. It's gonna be awesome. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, we're lining up for a cracker. All right, so that means everybody is here. We're live on YouTube, Johnny.
We are live on YouTube, correct.
Fantastic.
Okay, so let's get started.
Yeah, hello everybody and welcome to our 19th Town Hall. After various different experiments, it's been decided that we're going to change up the formats a little bit and we're going to hashtag MakeTownHallsGreatAgain. So if you can go to the next slide, we can just detail what's happening there. Make Town Halls great again. As you can see, we've found it quite difficult to follow our town halls. We think that having everybody present for only 5 minutes means that there's a bit of information overload going on, and it's difficult to pass out what the most important updates and changes in each team are. So we'd like to hear from teams on a slightly longer time preference and say, you know, rather than here's what we've done over the last 2 weeks, present sort of once every 2 months, have a clear view of how your work relates to the OKRs that your team has set up, what priorities you're working on, and we strongly encourage demonstrations of the work that has been going on because these tend to stick in people's minds better and give everybody a better sense of what the sort of long-term work in each team is. So as you see, we'll have 4 teams every 2 weeks, 20 minutes intro for the sort of state of us and general kind of catch-up. And then each team will get 10 minutes, and we recommend that we do a 7-minute presentation and 3 minutes for questions and answers because we really wanted this format to be a little bit more interactive and in person. So that's why you can see us all on camera today. As I said, demos are strongly encouraged, and that's pretty much everything from me because we really want to get into some amazing presentations that we have today from our 4 teams. And we'll sort of move straight into the state of us with people ops and an update from Steph.
Hey guys, so it's going to be actually Harry presenting today for people ops and recruitment.
Exactly, thank you, Harry.
No worries at all. So a quick shout out really to Chris Bowden, his first day today. So welcome, and I hope you really enjoy your journey. He's coming on as a digital marketing manager, so really get involved in the channels and introduce yourself really. So next slide, please. So kicked off with recruitment. We currently have 12 open recs. We've worked really hard to get this number down, really focusing on some of the critical roles for us. The last 6 months, we really focused on getting candidates that really sort of match our values and principles and really share our vision. So we've done really well to do that. I mean, I've seen some candidates passing their probations and doing really well. So it's good to see that we are hiring the correct people for us. And I'm really excited to see some of the people that we're hiring for coming on sort of the future months as well. So really looking forward to that. We've gone too far, I guess, on this presentation.
That was me totally. Let me go back.
Yeah, you can use the arrows on your keyboard to navigate.
Just to carry on, I mean, we've got a list of critical roles that we are focusing on order of sort of priority. We really want people to sort of get involved in this. At the moment, it's just a recruitment team, Carl, Nabil, and Gerard really focusing on this. But we really want people's input. So if you feel that we should be focusing in other areas, get involved in the discuss thread there. If you feel that we're focusing on wrong areas as well, get involved. I mean, the top priority role for us still remains as the legal counsel. So if you guys know any good legal people within our space or other disruptive technology industries, then definitely reach out to me or Barbara and we can kill this headache for us that we've got at the moment. Moving on to referral bonus. Just want to say thanks to everyone that has referred people to us, to the team. It's really helped. The volume has increased massively. The quality of candidates has been very good. They're, like I said before, they're really matching our values and principles now. And a lot of them are getting hired. So please, please, please keep them coming. So people are due some of their referral bonuses, 5,000 worth of SNT. Feel free to reach out to me or PeopleOps if you want to find out a bit more about the dates and when they're due. Moving on as well is there was some confusion along with the actual process itself of the referral bonus. And we've discontinued the old way, which was going to a form and filling it out. We felt the best way so that it doesn't fall through the net is to reach out to me and Barbara directly or to talent@status. So there, please sort of upload the candidate CV along with your names, the candidate CC'd in, and for the role that you're actually referring them to. So I think this works the best. And please do try to refer these people right at the beginning of the process. We've had a few occasions whereby someone's referred somebody whilst they're in the sort of third or fourth step, and that doesn't unfortunately count. So do try and refer them right at the beginning of the process to stop any confusion happening there. Moving on to status introductory project. So this is just like any other department or team within the business who are trying to be innovative and creative. So this is a new way that we're looking to hire people. So if you have a candidate that you think is really strong, but you want to see a bit more from them in terms of work. So we're trying to move towards a more trial project way of recruitment. This is going to be the new way, but we are still going to be doing the traditional way as well, which is interviewing at least sort of 5 steps through. But we want to see people doing more trial work for us. And this will be paid a flat rate and just for maybe a few weeks to a month to see what someone can actually really deliver. And then by the end of that, we should be looking to make an offer, hopefully, fingers crossed, and hopefully it will bring us stronger candidates through this way as well. We've had a lot of good candidates apply to us, have fallen short for whatever reason. So this is a chance for them to sort of show what they can do. Finishing off really for me is last 2 points is Glassdoor. Not everyone's cup of tea, but I do recommend everyone go there for a few minutes just to say how great it is to work at Status and how we rock, of course. But obviously, if you've had a bad experience with us, then I suggest maybe not go to Glassdoor and come to us directly to speak about what your issues are and problems are. And we as PeopleOps will definitely look to improve that and get better at what we can do. Of course, we're in this together, guys. So if you have any concerns, feel free to speak to us and we can see where we can help with that. But yeah, I mean, just to say what the culture's like to work at Status with and what we are doing, because a lot of people do turn to Glassdoor to find out sort of an introduction to what it would be like to work for us. So it does help a lot. I mean, I know, like I said, people have mixed opinions, but it does help. And just to finish off is interview best practice. We try to get feedback from every single candidate that goes through the process with us. And something that keeps popping up, probably number one, is interviewers being late to interviews. I know it works both ways, and sometimes candidates don't turn up as time, but we need to make sure we're doing things the right way. So I do sort of urge interviewers to really make that a priority to get to interviews on time. And that's been the biggest thing coming back from the feedback. And lastly, it's just if anyone feels they need any sort of training or coaching on interviews, me and Barbara are more than happy to do one-on-one coaching for that. So please reach out to me and Barbara and we can help wherever we can. And that's all from me and PeopleOps. Cheers.
Thank you. That moves us directly into marketing with Sean, Johnny, and Exiled Surfer.
Cool. I'll jump into this slide. My internet. But just imagine I'm saying something really insightful.
Yeah, what's the audio there?
Can you hear the audio? Hello?
Now it's good.
Yeah.
But I missed the first sentence.
Cool. Sorry. It's, yeah, don't know if the internet connection here is not.
Yeah, it's breaking off.
Mentions and impressions and engagements have all generally decreased in the past fortnights. To be honest, we see a similar trend off the back of any of the ETH global events or any big events that we're a part of. We see a huge surge engagements with our properties. And so, yeah, so this is just a natural decline, obviously, comparing us to the previous fortnights. Also, we had the community competition really ramping up during that time period. And so that was another reason why we saw a huge amount of mentions. So though is looking at the top performing content. It's great to see that much of the content was hackathon focused. So that's a great thing to see. And then the other interesting little tidbit to share is that, you know, there's been some discussions internally amongst the marketing team around the role of. Interesting is that Facebook, while only accounting for 16% of our total posts, we don't post at the same frequency on Facebook. It actually attributes 44% of our total clicks through to whatever properties we're driving people through to. So whether that's our status or our website or any other. You know, with our Spanish channels and hopefully with our upcoming Korean Facebook channel that we're going to be creating as well, it'll be one that we will you know, continue to support. So yeah, that's that. Next slide.
Cool. So I'll take this one. Obviously, events is becoming a much more important part of our communication strategy. So there's a lot going on. Obviously, we'll be at DevCon, which is really exciting.
Steph, next slide.
Can you guys? Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Cool. So there's a lot of events going on from the previous slide, but then diving into the hackathon, we're making a lot of really good progress. So we've got the floor defined, and the product is just really bringing the event space to life. You can check out the floor plan in this doc. We've identified some really awesome judges. Really excited about all the people here. And three more to be announced this week. So really exciting, just bringing the community together. There's also an experience list, which Andy, myself, help from Adiola and Mathemagicians, and then Gabriella for community, bringing these experiences to life now. So it's really cool. You can dive into this doc and you'll see all the various things we've got planned. And then finally, we're working on an agenda. I'll do my best to get that out this evening, maybe tomorrow. And then we can start identifying times for the sponsor talks, for keynotes, for various workshops. So please stay tuned on that if you want a workshop. Cool. So the venue is obviously set. We'll be at the National House Smichov, which is a beautiful venue. You can see the space here in this photo. And there's also some really cool events happening outside our hackathon at this event. So Monday, the ETHMA will be hosting the Council of Prague. Boris and Adiola are organizing that. So if you want to take part in the Ethmagicians, follow that thread. And then we're inviting the Ethmagicians to our hackathon as well. So really excited to just have that community there with us. And then also the Swarm team is going to be hosting their meetup at the venue in the hall. So the Ethmagicians and the Swarm team hosting their meetup. So that's really cool. That's all happening on Monday. And it is confirmed. So we'll hold the venue all week throughout DevCon. We'll be live streaming the talks. Anyone who doesn't have a ticket is invited to come and join and watch the talks and work on whatever they want to work on. So really excited just to get, you know, everyone under the same roof. Exciting. Next slide. So one thing we're working on is rolling out a status developer Twitter channel. As Sean mentioned in previous town halls, we've been penalized by the algorithm on Twitter for over posting at times. And just with all the insane amount of work that's happening, how to break off and try spinning out a really technical focused Twitter channel. That way we can engage with the immediate community that way. We'll pilot this, see how it goes, and then we'll report back once we get this up and running. So happy to see that come to life. Next slide. And the other piece of work that is ongoing at Refresh. Michael, myself, a few others have defined a proposed information architecture. And now Andre, Hazel, and the design team is working on the initial set of designs. So you can see a mock-up here. It's still work in progress, but I've put a post in Discuss just to provide to this architecture. And then the other thing we'll need is input from the various teams. So the way we're going about it is the homepage is ultimately just a portal into all of the various streams of work, trying to democratize the various initiatives as much as possible. And this will hopefully give the individual teams and people a bit more ownership over the work. Team to get, you want to update your page, feel free to do so. And Michael's made some great progress with Ghost to enable that. So check out the post and Discuss, provide feedback, and then help us define the content for your page and start writing copy. And the goal to have this live, hopefully Andre and Ned and the team don't kill me, but is before DevCon, but we'll see if we can make it.
Cool. I'll jump in here. CommuniTEE Winners. So we're super excited to announce that these are the two final winners for the two categories that we had for the CommuniTEE competition. So we had on the left, the status camo tee, which comprises a whole bunch of status logos. And that is the status themed t-shirt. And then on the right, we have the Decentralized Africa tee from the Ilgori factory. And yeah, really awesome tee. That's for the crypto culture tee. In terms of votes, we had 921 votes in total, which was a huge effort from the community. Huge shout out to Jessica Angel from the art project, who did an amazing job rallying the community behind this. We're already started having calls with the community members on how we can do more grassroots kind of events, grassroots competitions and activations with these artists. So super exciting there.
Cool, so that's me. A lot of exciting stuff's happening with our status. Jacob, our awesome DevOps guy, has automated a way for us to do Ghost installs on a self-hosted solution. And together with Corey, we've come up with an implementation of two-factor authorization with OAuth. There's just one restriction on that, is that it'll be limited to the status.im email domains. So that means we'll have to come up with a solution for our community contributors. Also, we're going to be having, along with web refresh, there's a theme update coming, which will have the unified header. So you saw the design that Johnny put up there from our awesome design team. It'll be the same on our status. And if you look at the other designs that are available on Figma, you'll see what the blog looks like there. There's also going to be, with the system architecture update, new top-level categories. So there'll be 5 categories that Johnny and I came up with. So culture, media, technical, news, and community. And those will be aggregators for the other tags that we do. And there'll be carousels on the front page so that people can see all the original stuff from each of our top level tags. There'll be individual pages for each of the initiatives in our ecosystem. So for Embark and Nimbus and Hard Wallet as well. Also upcoming with the new theme update, there'll be QR clear links into status channels. So we'll be driving discussion there as part of our usage campaign for status. One thing that's going to be up for discussion is a link into Discuss. I'll be putting up a post about that. We have Discuss hooked into Ghost, and so we'll have to figure out whether or not it is that we want to be driving discussion to the blog that we see on Discuss from our posts that come from there. So that's an issue about moderation. Sean and I have talked about reaching out to the community as part of the ambassadors program to get moderators in to guard against spam. And the most awesome thing that's coming up for status is a use case. So you see there's a link, there's front-end code for medium claps and a proof of concept from Ricardo, who was done last Friday, for us to do SNT integration. So the next iteration of the Our Status blog, you'll either be able to clap, upvote posts, or you'll be able to send directly SNT or ETH. And we'll be pulling the addresses from Status Direct. So I guess we'll need to have a conversation with people about their public addresses, how they want to deal with that. But we got a use case, I'll esteem it, coming up, people. And that'll lead us into being able to open that up to users with the automation that Jacob set up so that we can get one step closer to having an integrated blog client with status. And as far as the posts and contributors are concerned, I set a personal deliverable for September 1st to have 20 authors and 20 posts on Ghost. And we've got 84 posts and 30 authors. It's really amazing. Thanks you guys for helping me meet my Q3 objective. And it's great working with all of you and great seeing how much action there is inside of status and the content that's coming out. Thanks for making Johnny's job easier.
Fantastic. That moves us directly into Embark with Yuri.
All right. So I'm very excited to talk to you today about, well, can you go to the previous slide, please? Spoilers. So yeah, very excited to talk about Embark and what the Embark team has been up to this past, I guess, 2 months or so. And so we are finally releasing 3.2, and it took a bit longer than we expected, but it is definitely worth it. So today I'm going to be talking about that. I'm going to be talking about also other projects that the Embark team have been working on, as well as future plans. So with the Embark 3.2, one quick disclaimer is that there is a lot of stuff in it. So in the interest of time, I cannot actually go through every single feature, but I will go through the highlights and with some overview over each of those highlights. So to start, next slide, yeah. So to start, we'll have we adding even better ENS support. So we already had some support for ENS in the previous release, but now in this release, Embark will support automatically deploying and setting up ENS in the case if it's a dev chain. And if it's a chain that is already known to have ENS, then it will just use the ENS contracts on that chain. So meaning that if you're connecting Embark to mainnet, then it's smart enough to just use the ENS that's in mainnet. But if you have a shared chain or your own local private chain, then Embark will set up the ENS contracts and make everything ready for you. And then Embark also supports configuring ENS domains for the particular dev chain the user is using. So you can go next slide. So as an example, a developer could specify, okay, I want status.at to point to this address, and then when the developer would do EmbarkJS names resolve status.at, that would resolve to that particular domain. I realize here in the slides actually it's not matching, but that's just an error. And this way it allows developers to develop locally with ENS, knowing that then when they switch to a testnet or a live net, it will all still work. And since they're doing it locally and with this registration system, they don't have to wait And they don't have to do auctions and wait for the domain to be ready, etc. Next slide. Wait. Okay. So we also added to the Embark demo, we added a naming tab, so the developer can easily play around with the ENS functionality. So you can see and you can see also how to integrate that with a DApp. So you can resolve a name, can look up, do a reverse lookup to know what is the domain associated to an address, and it can also register more domains if he wants to. All right, so the pipeline, we also improved a lot under the hood. So for most developers, it should pretty much work the same still, but there's a lot more now functionality and customization that is possible. So one thing that a developer can do now is that they can inject the Webpack configuration and they can customize this to their own needs. So this allows Embark pretty much to support any of the Webpack workflows, while before developers were forced to pretty much do a plugin for Embark to support some specific thing that Webpack generally already supported anyway. And we're also introducing 2 new modes. So this modes, the web development and production, and they each have their advantages and downsides. So developer would be much faster to create the output, and also include source maps, which is really useful for debugging. But the downside is that it generates much bigger files. Production or whatever, it's far slower. So you can see it's 10 times slower to generate the file, but it optimizes, and the files are more than 3 times smaller. So this is ideal especially for someone who want to put the dApps on status, which is a mobile app, and wants to save on bandwidth. So they generally would build in production and then release the dApp. And in terms of default, Embark Run is typically used for development, so it defaults to the development mode, and Embark Build and Upload default to production. However, developer can still override the mode if he wants to with a parameter. And Embark uses under the hood a library called EmbarkJS. This library is essentially is a library that abstracts the functionality, so the developer can move between technologies and stacks, and just by configuring which one he wants, and its code will still work. So if a developer using Embark is using Swarm and now he wants to use IPFS, all he needs to do is pretty much say, okay, I want to now use IPFS, and he doesn't need to change any of the other code because that's all already abstracted. We're releasing this as a standalone, but part of this is technical reasons, so it's less coupled with Embark. Other reasons is a lot of developers express the desire to use this as a standalone. Some want to use with Node.js. And so we released it as a standalone, and it works both with the browser, of course, and with Node.js. EmbarkJS also does a lot of work under the hood to establish the connections correctly to the various servers, not just Ethereum, but also IPFS, Swarm, and whatever it's using. So we added support for the EIP 11.02. So around, I believe it's next month or so, MetaMask, Mist, Status, and other browsers, they will stop injecting the Web3 objects. This was a bit of an issue because it led to some privacy concerns. And this IP solves that by requiring the dApp to request for an Ethereum connection, which it's much better to preserve that privacy. And now we can go next slide. Oh, that's the next. Oh, okay. One thing also we added was an error object, just in case there's any sort of connection errors. The developer can check what those are and then present the appropriate message, such as you need an Ethereum compatible browser, or please, activate MetaMask. And we also made it available in the Embark console, which it's really useful to interact with Swarm and ENS and other services. Another library we work on is, so Embark supports Swarm, and we're very serious about Swarm. Unfortunately, the latest release broke a lot of things, and there was no JavaScript library that was compatible with the latest Swarm. And so we did a library that supports that latest Swarm, and it's pretty much the only JavaScript library that supports it. It comes with Embark by default, but it's also available as a standalone for developers that need to use it as a standalone. And this is something we'll keep maintaining, since we use it for Embark, and at the same time it can be useful for the community. Can we go next? All right. So another command we're adding is the Embark Console. So in Embark dashboard, there was a command line, but it was fairly limited. As it was hard to copy paste things. You couldn't really move with the cursor back. There was no autocomplete. So from a developer perspective, it could be a bit annoying. It's useful, but it could still be a bit annoying. So we added this command, which it creates a full-fledged REPL for the developer. And it has everything that you expect. It has the cursor, it has complete, all sorts of very powerful features. One interesting thing is that if it detects there's an Embark instance already running, it will just connect to it. Or if there isn't, it will start its own and deploy the contracts, etc., before actually showing the console. And we actually have a bounty to support this in the dashboard, which is ongoing, and it seems to be nearly there. And so this type of REPL will be available in the dashboard as well, and that's very exciting because it's a really powerful feature. Now, the other thing we're introducing in 3.2 is it's a full parallel deployment. So Embark generates a graph of the contracts based on their configuration. So all the contracts are related with each other, and based on that, it determines what is the best order to deploy the contracts, and then it pretty much deploys the contracts sequentially. In this release, we are making that, instead of being sequential, to make it fully parallel. So you can see in this representation, pretty much most of these contracts can be deployed independently. So they can be deployed at the same time. The exceptions are, say, some contract can only be deployed if the two parents are deployed first. So in the parallel deployment is actually taking that into account, that it deploys all of them at the same time. But if the parents have not been deployed yet, it will wait for them to be deployed, and then it will deploy. So depending on the size of the project, it can make a dramatic difference. So we have a test app. We call it the test app, and in the Embark test that we used to test various functionalities of Embark, and in that case, it made a tenfold difference. And it's like this is it's proportional to the number of contracts. So the more contracts you have that are independent, the more of a speed up this is. Oh, and by the way, that graph was generated with Embark as well. It was a feature from 3.0. We also improved Vyper support. So we had Vyper support since 3.0, but the 0.10 release seems to have broke some stuff. So we updated the latest version, so everything is working again with that Vyper version. And we were also not showing compilation errors before. And now we're showing that. And as you can see, you can also run tests against your Vyper contracts. We also are displaying now in the tests the gas costs. So displaying the gas costs not just for the contracts that were deployed, but as well for each test. So this is a feature that was requested a lot. As it turns out that knowing the time the test took is not particularly useful. The developers are really more interested on how much gas that test actually used. So another thing is we improve the test speed even more, and we'll continue to do so. So by default, you can in one sample app, the Embark test takes 9 seconds. However, if an Embark's instance is already running, Embark will connect to that instance and will reuse the compiler. By Embark instance, I mean if you are developing and you have Embark run in some terminal, and in another terminal you run Embark test, then it will just connect to it and it will reuse the compiler. So, which cuts the time in half, because it turns out loading the compiler in JavaScript is actually quite a heavy thing to use. And we're also introducing like a node command, and that gives us.
Yuri, I'm afraid that's we're well out of time.
Oh no, really?
Yeah.
Are you joking?
I'm not. Can you go through just the key elements of the slides that you have left?
Yeah, because I'm literally halfway through. Okay. So how much time do I have?
30 seconds.
No, you're kidding. Seriously? Can you give me 1 minute?
Yeah, go.
Okay, so just go back to the previous slide. Okay, so the Embark tests, if you do what minus node Embark, it will connect to Embark and reuse everything in Embark, and that dramatically cuts down the time to 1 second. So it's super fast. We also had test code coverage. So again, a very requested feature. Unfortunately, existing tools were pretty much very locked into another specific tool, and we cannot use this. So we end up having to do it ourselves. And we did the entire thing in-house, which is also would be useful for future features. We're adding this deploylf, which is for conditional deploys. Essentially, you can determine if you want to deploy a contract based on the response of another contract. We're also adding configurations for protected key files. So you can require, say, secrets that are not in source control, preferably, and just specify your key file and password. This is a very requested features to support accounts in the index, and that can be done now. We're also adding a template downloader. So if there's a known template, say TypeScript, you can just do minus template TypeScript. Otherwise, you can specify also a GitHub repo and even a branch, which is very useful for workshops and things like that. Next slide. No. Next slide. Okay. So we also improved the website a lot, from the structure to the code. We added the copy paste features. We really work a lot on it, and we'll still be working a lot more. Next slide. We also improved the plugin templates page, added more templates and more plugins. We'll keep improving that. You will not see that on the website because it has not been merged yet. Will only be when the release is done. And we also have a Docker image, and that has everything installed, all the dependencies that Embark need, all the services from IPFS to Go Ethereum. And that's not all we have been doing this past 2 months or so. We've also been working on Embark 4, and which also serves as a base for Studio, and we'll be talking more about that in DevCon.
Cool. Thank you so much, Yuri. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions, and I'm sorry that I had to rush you there. But really, the ecosystem work being done by Embark with ENS support, Swarm, with all the templates, with all the plugins that you guys are doing, it's really incredible to watch. And if you want to go and find some cool photos of spaceships, the Embark repos are definitely the best place in GitHub for that. We move swiftly into design with Ned.
Let me kick that off, Andy. Lots has happened in the meantime with the design team. There's a lot of work going on when it comes to building a component library. Hardware wallet is in development. Web refresh is getting quite some attention. If you can go one slide back, please. No, we don't. Yeah. One of the recent things is that we tested the latest design for chat and command, so basically making transactions from within chat. Highlighting this as it'll move us into further directions. One of the findings there was that yes, the command and reply designs worked pretty smooth. No issues.
I'm sorry, Hester, everybody's struggling with your audio. Is there anybody else who can present these slides?
Hand over to Ned, please.
Ned?
Hello. So I'm not sure how much of this I can speak to about the UXR sessions in Berlin, but I guess in summary that I could talk about a lot of the exercises they did was revisiting the behaviors and how we in the design team are kind of working all together to, reshape a lot of that language together and, I don't know, look at some possibilities within the app and learning and how it's going to move forward in those revisions. So if you go to the next slide. I just wanted to talk quickly a little bit about branding and brand design and like what we're up to and the thinking, because I know it's going through a lot of different channels and people are probably wondering what it is. So simply, we think of brand design more like a verb than a noun, more in helping us unify and create a language together that we use to speak. So, and that's also done by finding really these truths with our principles and scaling them through everything we do. So that's a lot of why probably everyone was writing all these different things and how the principles relate to them in their work. And we think this is really important because that's ultimately how you can shape and create an original language together. So there's a lot of design that's just created for design, but in this instance, we look at all of these things and look for a pattern to emerge. And I believe then in there's something original that we can build on. And ultimately, it helps us in what we say being delivered in what we do. On the next slide, this came out of a system design sprint that we had in Vienna, which was actually, how do you actually begin to look for an original language? And this came from not just looking at a logo, but looking at actually what you want to teach people and the behaviors and starting simply around some ideas. So we took 3 binaries here, which are, public, private, read, write, you and me. And if you think about these, you can expand them further to the right there about read, write, private, and public, and start to build this language and teach people what their actions mean just within the application. And that ultimately starts to become a brand language, or it becomes a brand. Brand is interface. So, and what that might look like if you go to the next slide. One back maybe. Here. So brand is interface. I mean, without even applying any design language to it, we could completely see very clearly the difference in these modes if you had a public mode or a private mode, a public chat versus a private chat, what public and private conversations might look like in an interface. If you have a public or a private profile, or if you have ephemeral data that's just deteriorating, like you just start to visualize actually and teach people and know they get a sense of where they are in an environment that begins to slowly educate them on the decisions they're making. And the last part on the next slide, was kind of a work in progress. Like, I just wanted to read this quickly because a lot of the other thing we do in brand design is take a lot of very complicated ideas and try to make them very simple. So if you're looking at all these principles and how they apply, it can be very, confusing or you're not sure, but this was a very quick way to write something for all of us. So I'm going to read it to you quickly. We explore our beliefs objectively in order to define principles and a language together. This language enables us to have a conversation, to describe and build our tools. Our tools enable us to create components which form our interface. Our interface is an iterative conversation with our community. This community dialogue is a social interaction enabling us to grow, teach, and build a global platform together. A new platform where no languages exist yet, where we may choose our own states, a state for each of us, incentivizing only to raise the value of ourselves, the state of us. This is our and your status. Thanks.
So that moves us directly into core chats with Pedro and Andrea.
Hey.
Thank you, Ned.
So yeah, in the core chat team, we've been working mostly on the perfect forward secrecy. Also group chats, that's all new functionality, and in the case of group chats, existing functionality that had been disabled for a while. That's going to be merged soon in the developed branch behind the feature flag, which will be enabled on nightlies. This will be something that will be covered in the next slide by Andrea. As for desktop, we've been using desktop for development starting last week and contributing to improving and streamlining the desktop deployment pipeline. For instance, we've been working on removing building status quo from the desktop pipeline to simplify it and aligning the build process with mobile. The next priority will be bringing desktop to Windows, so there's one less barrier to moving from Slack to status. There's also this skin in the game experiment #1, which is linked there, underway with 3 funders and 11 accountables. So having the desktop app actually personally made it much easier for me to do something like this, to participate on something like this, because it means you don't have to go to the Android app and sign in every time. You just have this app, which is constantly running in the background. You can switch to it and talk to people. So it's been much easier to bring the conversation to status instead of falling back to Slack. Yeah, that's all I have. So off to Andrea.
Yeah, hello everyone. So I would like to go through a couple of points about group chats and PFS. So just a description of how the protocol works. So first of all, we have, I think previous slide, maybe, Pairwise encryption, yes. So the way we have adopted PFS to be working on group chats is simply by pairwise encryption. So essentially, you're gonna just establish a session with each participant and among each participant. So therefore, you're gonna send one whisper message per participant. This is, is very good for us, in order to test PFS, because the mechanism is exactly the same as direct messages, but we send more messages, so we have more opportunities to get feedback. There's more opportunities to get things wrong, which is great. The drawback, obviously, is bandwidth consumption and CPU consumption. It's more expensive to send many messages than to send just a single message. This is something that eventually probably we will be wanting to optimize at some point, maybe. And depending, I guess it really depends on the transport layer that we're gonna, adopt. So far as Whisper is already multicasting, so that shouldn't be too hard. I think the challenge here would be to keep things separate, so that every layer is completely separate and doesn't know about other layers. So ideally, we want to optimize only at the Whisper layer. But we will see. There are some open questions about this. We don't know how many users can be supported. I'm pretty confident that, in order, tens, should be fine. Hundreds, I don't know. That's something that we need to test out. But we will be pushing out first version, possibly capping the number of participants to, like, say 20 or so. We need to do some tests, and then see, how to move it forward. But in the meantime, we get lots of feedback, which is very good. Next slide. Thank you. So I just talked about the basically the encryption layer, which sits, below the high level layer, which is what I'm going to be describing now. So basically, this is exactly how do we organize the peers in a group chat, not in terms of encryption, but in terms of mainly like sending messages and permissions. So what is important for us is that no message is a single point of failure. Essentially, like if a message gets lost for whatever reason, because we know that the transport layer might not be very reliable, my servers had problems in the past, we don't want that user to be forever excluded from the conversation. We tend to shy away from retransmissions because it gives away a bit of darkness. So essentially, what we thought it was to include group memberships, details with each message. And basically, if you do that, then obviously there's a trade-off in terms of bandwidth. But if you lose a message, the next message you will still be able to essentially create a chat and be able to communicate in case you missed it. And also, it's quite nice because it shifts the problem. Essentially, now the problem is a problem that has been solved before, and we have a lot of literature, which is basically how to keep a piece of state synchronized among peers. And one way to do that has been very successful recently is conflict-free replicated data types. So that's basically, we're going to use those to essentially have group membership. Essentially, OR set, which is observed and removed set, which essentially should allow us to manage this piece of state quite effortlessly. The only bit of complication is that some changes need to be authenticated. So only admins have basically permission to perform certain actions, for example, adding new members, while other users are also able to perform certain actions on this piece of state. For example, a user who wants to leave should be able to modify this data structure. So we need to be a bit careful and understand how to handle these cases. And the main difficulty is that to authenticate the changes, the traditional way would be to sign, the hash of the content of this data structure when you propagate it. That is a bit problematic in our case because at some point we might want to offer plausible deniability, so signing is a no-no. So we need to sort of think about how we do it. We could just use the same encryption key the PFS uses that provides plausible deniability, but that's something for later stages. Next slide. Thank you. There's a video here of basically a desktop build and a mobile build, just to create in a chat and talking to each other. So don't mind, the UI hasn't been polished yet. Yeah, so that's very simply. So, and then, what's next, basically? So I take that, we're going to get some feedback from, basically enabling group chats. I hope people will use it. I hope everyone will use it. And we're going to get some feedback. So there's going to be something to fix, something to change. But then we will move on into implementing some user flow for one-to-one messages, especially when it comes to exchanging bundles when we can't exchange bundles. These, Mattei already provided some designs. It's probably just a matter of implementing them. And as we go along, we're going to continue, the effort of speccing out the protocol. It's it's kind of like now it's settling down. So like things are settling down. So it's a good time now to sort of like just write it down, and like it should be much more stable now. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. We, again, don't have time for Q&A, so let's just move on to our last one, which is the Nimbus team and research. So if you go one more slide forward, you'll see that we've got another little experiment to go in Townhall here. Me and Yuri are going to do a little bit of back and forth, Zahari rather, particularly about where the research team is and how Nimbus is going at the moment. So if Zahari's online, my first question for you in terms of the research that you guys have been doing is, can you give us a quick overview of what the first goal or milestone of the sharding clients that you guys are building actually is?
Well, our first goal is to be compatible with the rest of the currently developed sharding clients. Basically, the Ethereum Foundation has defined milestone where the sharding client, they run a separate blockchain using a completely separate networking protocols. And the initial goal is just to work on the consensus algorithm that will be running in this blockchain. Basically, what the clients will agree on won't be real transactions, but rather just blobs of arbitrary bytes. And so our goal here is just to be compatible with the rest of the clients, to stay together with the whole pack, and to test Nimbus with the rest of the clients as soon as new parts of the specs are being accepted.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna ask you about testing in a moment, but I wonder, there's sort of two different aspects to this research, at least for me and for some people that have been asking on Reddit. You've got sort of sharding, which is this idea that we can split up the network into little bits of shards and have them communicate, and that will increase sort of transaction throughputs and the scalability of the network. But also one of the goals of Nimbus is to run on resource-restricted clients. So I wonder, what is the logical connection between sharding and running on resource-restricted clients? And how do you see that fitting into your overall research goals?
Well, the resource-restricted clients are actually enabled by another bit that is coming in Ethereum 2.0. It's the so-called stateless clients. Basically, this is a modification in the protocols that allow each individual client to completely run without any kind of local database storing the blockchain. And the way this works is that each transaction that is broadcasted to the network must also include the contents of the Ethereum state that it's going to touch and modify, that it's going to use. And basically, because you have Merkle proofs and you know the root hash of the entire state tree, if you know how Merkle trees work, this is enough of a proof to be certain that the state you have been given is authentic, and you can hold it just for temporarily while you execute the transactions, and then you can discard it. And basically, this allows the clients to work without any storage. And you can also be even smarter, and then you can just filter the transaction that you don't care about, and you can execute only the transactions that are important for your own funds and your own smart dApps and so on.
Interesting. We've got to embed the world computer all over the world. So tell me, to come back to your points about tests, it's been a while since Nimbus passed the EVM test suites. What are the challenges with syncing the whole blockchain at the moment?
Well, we have already started attempting to sync the blockchain. We talk with the other clients. For example, we obtain blocks from Get and execute the transactions in them and so on. And part of what we do right now is debugging, mostly, because the test suite doesn't cover everything in Ethereum. But another area that we kind of underestimated a lot is the precompiled contracts that are available in the Ethereum clients. Basically, they're just 8 precompiled contracts, but they use quite exotic cryptography. They use the goal here is to allow anonymous transactions that work in a similar way to the Zcash cryptocurrencies. And because the Zcash cryptocurrency is based on quite new and exotic cryptography, what we have discovered is that there is not a lot of existing implementations that we can reuse. So right now what we do is we port some existing implementation in Rust and Go. We port them to NIM so we can implement these precompiled contracts for zero-knowledge proofs.
Very, very cool. I do love a good ZK snark. So tell me, Zahari, how can I run Nimbus on my own right now? And what is it capable of doing if I wanted to do that?
Well, it should be very easy if you are a NIM user already. Basically, the first thing you have to do is obtain the NIM compiler. You can just follow the instructions from the NIM GitHub repo, for example. And then once you have the compiler in the NIM package manager that's called Nimbo, all you have to do is just clone the Nimbus repository and say Nimbo build. And you have a running Nimbus client. Basically, it has a very limited set of command line options at the moment. The most interesting thing you can do is start the blockchain sync with pointing Nimbus to another Ethereum client. And we have a wiki page that explains how to do this. I'll link it in the YouTube comments that will be on the live stream.
Cool, that's amazing. And when we say that Nimbus can run on resource-restricted devices, how restricted are those devices? Can I run it on my Raspberry Pi or on my Ruder or something like that?
Well, we haven't tried running on many platforms yet, but obviously this is a focus of our development. And this means that what we try to do is have efficient code, keep an eye on the memory usage, and so on. And basically, NIM here really helps because it compiles to C. And each and every exotic platform in the world that is appearing, it always starts with a C compiler. Basically, this is the very first step you do to introduce a new hardware platform. And since NIM compiles to C, this means that we can easily target all kinds of new platforms. And Raspberry Pi, that will be no problem at all. It's just Linux. Well, what we aim here is running NIM or, for example, some embedded application. You can imagine using Nimbus in a bus to pay your ticket, or industrial applications like this.
Yeah, I want Nimbus everywhere. I want it in turnstiles. I want it in points of sale devices, all of those kind of things. So, that brings me to another point. I'm a bit of a JavaScript developer. I wonder, is there something like a Web3.nim library to access the Web3 ecosystem at the moment? Or, what is missing to get there from where you guys currently are?
Well, this is on a roadmap, certainly. We really have to make a little bit more progress on the JSON RPC interface of Nimbus. It already supports quite a lot of calls. But the next step would be to create a client library that is making use of these calls and is able to create transactions that call into existing smart contracts or monitor the blocks for events that your application cares about. This is basically a framework for creating dApps. And it's on our roadmap, but our first goal here is to actually be able to pair Nimbus with Embark, for example. So you have the same development experience that all the Embark users have right now, but using Nimbus as your backend.
Yeah, I think that the Embark team have certainly proved through, ENS support and their Swarm API and all of the crazy ecosystem work that they've been doing lately, just how great and easy it is to integrate with that platform through either a plugin or some direct work with that incredibly responsive team. So, there's a few other resources that I think we can put into the YouTube channel for people. Mami wrote a fantastic article about why we use NIM, the language, at all. And there's this awesome NIM lists, which we'll leave a link to in the channel. But I think as a final question to you for this particular edition is, I'm a Go or a Clojure or a Vyper developer. Where do I go to get started with NIM? What's the place to go and begin hacking away at this stuff so that I can understand how it's going to work on embedded devices and where we can deploy Ethereum across the world?
Well, for developers, I think a really strong focus of our team is creating reusable components. Like the other Ethereum clients, they try to be the whole package, something for end users. And what we really strive to do is create these reusable libraries that you can use to create all kinds of Ethereum applications. For example, you can do a standalone PSS or Whisper chat or some kind of block explorer that is using only our components. And the goal here, and what we try to do is every time we create a library, we document it very well. You create reusable packages that are available through the Nimble package manager. So if the first thing the developers have to do is learn a little bit more about NIM, and then it would be very easy for them to adopt what we have created as packages.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Zahari. It's been fascinating to watch you guys make so much progress. And the thought of having, like clients enabled sharding clients everywhere in the world is genuinely a fascinating one. And I hope that this town hall has given people a better sense of exactly what the direction of Status overall is, because it can be a little bit difficult from time to time to follow all of the projects. But it's why we chose these particular 4 to sort of showcase today, because we think that it gives the broad gamut of what it is we're involved with. We have research in terms of trying to identify how we can actually get light clients going and working across the ecosystem and embed the world computer everywhere, which is a research-intensive thing. But we also have an incredible design language being built by Hester, and Patrick, and Ned that's based on user feedback, on real user testing that we're doing in Berlin, UK, and all around the world, trying to understand where it is that real people are actually falling away in the educational journey towards Web3. Obviously, the Embark team is enabling the entire ecosystem to come together to build really truly decentralized products from one place and then ship them everywhere and give that kind of power to people to really put, the decentralized Web3 into everybody's pockets in an easy and secure manner, which is fantastic. And then obviously the core chat going down at Status with proper perfect forward secrecy and some of the more advanced methodologies in terms of implementing privacy and secure messaging is really fantastic to see. So I hope this town hall has given everybody a better view of where we're going. I hope it's been a little bit more digestible. My apologies particularly to Yuri and the Embark team for having to cut them off. They're so productive that nobody can stop them. And we'll iterate through this particular format and bring you another town hall in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for joining us, and goodbye.
Thank you, Andy, and everyone. Bye.
Adios.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Later.